All right, EA Ermor, turn 42, kind of a busy one. We finished research in Construction 6. This is very important for our lanterns, although I don't think we're going to be making too many right away for reasons that we'll discuss in a bit. We miss with a site search, and the remnants of our dead prophet have dissipated, so we can declare another one. And speaking of the reason that, our prophet is dead, Agartha has declared a new prophet themselves, so both of us are recovering. And then I believe these are our old men. Yeah, so there's no province defense here from TNN, so we took a province, but of course they are not skeletons yet. And then we catch quite a bit of action in the Vanheim-Ulm War. So let's take a look at this. This is not an interesting battle because it's pretty much uncontested, but it is interesting to take a look at the armies involved. Please excuse me if we've looked at this bless recently. I cannot remember, and I really ought to keep a checklist even during the game, just of like everyone's bless. I'm constantly forgetting and having to look at old turns. So anyway, let's see what these Vanheers have. Yeah, quite a bit of resistances. No poison resistance though, interestingly. Magic weapons is important on them. A little bit more strength. They have quite a bit of strength, so this is going to put them in very scary territory. Bark skin, which is an interesting pick. I know some people don't like that, although I will say that I do think increased protection is something that the Vanheers want, and bark skin is kind of challenging for Vanheim to get onto their units because they have no native nature magic. And, that said, it is the early age, right? So there is plenty of indie nature magic running around, but still, it's a lot easier to have it on the bless, and then a bit of undying, which certainly is not going to hurt these guys. So, Vanheers are scary sacreds, and I think that's a perfectly competent bless. He's got some ranged units for siege chaff, I'm assuming, or I do actually like mixing ranged units into armies, right? Because you never know when you're gonna go up against some dudes in robes. But I will say that with the elves specifically, I feel like archers can be a bit rough because you can pop your own glamour that way. So yeah, I'm not sure about using archers with elves, but certainly I am no elf expert. I mean, never played the elves in multiplayer, so as always, a grain of salt. And this is, I believe we've seen this skeleton raiding force from Ulm, perhaps not in battle, but certainly on the strategic map. I think they were in Vanheim's cap circle last turn, and there's only one commander here who's making more skeletons, and it looks like he's using death gems to keep his fatigue down, so he can make even more skeletons. And they like being in the dark, right? This is in a cave, and it looks like there's some Bakamona province defense, but they have run into a group of Vanheers. Speaking of those Vanheers, now there was no, let's see, yeah, they have Spirit Sight. Okay, yeah, that must be on the bless, because I'm pretty sure it's not built in. For some elves, they do have it built in, but I didn't think Vanheim were one, so it's not really going to matter that it's in the cave, right? These Vanheers are going to chop equally effectively as in the daylight. And Vanheers against skeletons, there's only one way that ever goes, unless it's infinite skeletons. And even then, you better be making them pretty fast, because Vanheers are very choppy, so yeah, that doesn't really work out for Ulm. Not the end of the world, right? One mage. 50 long dead does hurt a little bit. That's a decent amount. 50 permanent long dead, that's a decent amount of death gems. But certainly not a crippling loss, and I do believe he'd gotten at least a couple provinces from those raiders, so maybe worth it in the end. And then this is just, speaking of raids, another raid from Ulm that isn't really contested from Vanheim. So it's interesting to see them battling back and forth. That still looks like it's still up in the air. Although that big stack of Vanheers, I'm glad I don't have to deal with it, at least not yet. And then this is us attacking the barbarians. So it looks like we went in here first, and I didn't see any battles from Russ, so I don't think we're going to have a bump. So yeah, it's a lot of barbarians. Looks like the scout reports were pretty accurate. But with the flaming arrows, the Howl, and the Equite, you can see that the Howl, maybe distracted, a few barbarians, but again, I don't think that the Howl really helped us all that much against the barbarians. It was kind of just a waste of gems. Would have been more useful had we actually run into an army from Russ. Assuming, of course, that they had to take out the barbarians because, as discussed, we didn't have enough nature gems for 2 casts. So we do lose a little bit, but none of our sacreds, which is nice. And, nothing really that expensive. So I'm overall happy with that result for over 100 barbarians. And then we catch a battle between Machaca and Niflheim, which in and of itself, not a super interesting battle. We'll just take a quick look. Yeah, M'Chaka just using some mundane troops, as well as some of their Buddhas, who have also been twice-born, so, using a similar thing that I've been doing. This guy's been given nature gems, which is a little interesting, because he has no nature paths. This guy definitely, can use these fire gems. A lot of gems have been given to these mages. Well, at least some of them. So yeah, usually I would expect somewhere, oh yeah, and he's already got, one of them's already died and come back. So for anyone that doesn't know, right, this is a white mage. You get different size chassis depending on, what size you were in life. And this is the size 2 chassis, and yeah, I don't actually see any nature mages in here, so not sure what those nature gems are about. Maybe he's like sneaking nearby, but yeah, he's just up against, a single scout. That said, like, Niflheim's scouts, they are giants, and they are sacred, interestingly. So if Niflheim's carrying a scary bless, they are kind of like little mini thugs, and Niflheim's bless is kind of nasty. Now that said, they are not priests, so the scouts can't bless themselves, so this scout is definitely screwed. Let's see if he managed to get any kills. No, he did not. And then we have some unexpected events. Famine is struck, that's fine, and didn't lose too many population. A few water gems, that's nice, and actually this is pretty nice. We get quite a few gems for a fair price. And then our patrolling paid some serious dividends. So we find a ton of scouts. We can see, like, right, Niflheim is trying to keep an eye on us. We also lose a scout because Vanheim was patrolling in that cave where they caught the Olmish raiders. And then we also catch a Vanheim scout, right? So they're interested in our war against TNN. And then we catch an Abyssian scout who somehow manages to kill one of our sacreds. And then we also catch a Kalian scout. But most importantly, we catch more than just scouts from the elves. And so, like, yeah, we catch this raiding group, so just a few of his sacreds with one of his thugs who's been given some air gems, probably for air elementals, and a little bit of kit. I do like this kit overall. It is kind of offensively oriented, so maybe could struggle a little bit, although with, yeah, defense skill this high, I think you could probably take out most province defense. And, like, yeah, here comes lesser air elementals, because, what we have patrolling here is definitely enough to trigger gem usage. So, like, this is a scary raiding group, but, compared to what we're bringing, I think we'll be just fine here. We should be able to roll over this without too much difficulty. Like, yeah, here come our Equite, who do struggle a bit, but, we're able to drive the defense down, like, especially once our guys Blood Surge. They have, like, good enough attack skill that they can connect, with the Elven Sacreds, and I do think his commander escapes, probably due to an HP route. Let's take a look. Yeah, so his commander gets away, so that's a little unfortunate, but we do knock out 9 of his Sacreds, who are not cheap, right? 40 gold. I think that's actually the same as our Equite. No, our Equite are more expensive. Cavalry are expensive. Always important to remember, especially for someone like me that likes to build them. But yeah, we only lose 3 of our Ostati. Definitely a trade worth making, and these are elves that are not going to be taking our provinces. And in addition to that, we catch another elf. And this is important, like, if you're trying to sneak through a lot of units in an area where you might get patrolled out. When you get patrolled out, groups get patrolled out individually, right? So, like, even though all these guys were in the same province, and if they'd fought a battle, they all would have fought together. When they get patrolled out, it's individual, so they end up having to fight separately. So it's actually extra risky, especially when your forces are split up to be trying to sneak through an area. So anyway, yeah, let's take a look at this guy. He's probably... Okay, no kit, but also, like, lesser air elementals, I'm guessing. Although it looks like, yeah, he's going through more of a thug script first, for whatever reason. I mean, it makes sense for raiding. So, yeah, I guess he just decided that, just surprised that, like, normally with this much stuff, you'd think he'd be using his gems, but he, didn't. So that's fine. We kill him. And if you'll just indulge me in a little bit of Ermorian joy, I think part of the reason that we were so successful is that in addition to patrolling with a fairly large force, Ermorian troops are better at patrolling than you might expect from regular infantry, right? They have higher than normal patrol strength. And while Dominions does have a lot of rough edges, they also have some, pretty cool design choices. And it's not like these units have any, like, special patrol bonus, right? It's just tied to their map move. And so since they have better than normal map move, they have better than normal patrol strength. So yeah, don't try to sneak past the Legion. It's not going to be good for you. And then speaking of patrolling, we kill some filthy brigands, and Atlantis is permanently vanquished. Really no idea what happened there, but goodbye Atlantis. And I will catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. We are taking it slow. In retrospect, probably a little too slow, although in my defense, now that we've actually gotten a scout onto TNN's capital, we can see that they have a fairly large force. I mean, the scouting report always lies, although sometimes it lies low. So, I mean, there's a good amount of stuff here, definitely. And, of course, while we have killed a lot of TNN's sacreds, their sacreds are stealthy and have glamour, so they don't show up in the scout reports. So there's probably more here than we can actually see. Furbolg warriors are decent. They don't have great armor, but they have better than average skills, so they're going to stack up okay against our legionaries. They're not going to love the javelins. We'll definitely do better in the javelin exchanges. But in melee, it'll be a little bit rough for our infantry. The equite, we'll roll over them like they roll over most normal infantry. And griffins are a little tough to use just because they're undisciplined, so they kind of always jump to the back, but they are fairly killy and do have a decent amount of hit points, so that's something that we're going to have to consider, especially, because we have dudes in robes, so griffins can definitely snipe them early on. And they also have a thrice-horned boar, right, as their pretender, and, while not exactly a super combatant, it's not going to be as bad as Mortality Grasps, but obviously, we've seen that my force compositions have struggled, with kind of more super combatant type units, so this is a bit concerning. So we are actually just going to hang out some more and do more patrolling for the most part. We're going to continue raiding forward, right, with our dudes in robes who we wish to turn into skeletons, and we have a second group here, same thing. And we've also got our over-kitted assassins moving into position, right, to go after any force go after the commanders of any force that raids out. Now, that said, trying to assassinate elves is going to be pretty challenging, so it really does depend on like what sort of force comes out, and we actually won't even be able to assassinate elves because they're stealthy. But if he moves out with like some Furbolg and a non-stealthy commander leading them, or actually even if it's a stealthy commander and he's leading non-stealthy units, then we'll at least have the option to try to assassinate if we want to. So, obviously the longer that we take, the more that Agartha is going to be able to build up their strength. Agartha is no friend of ours and will never be a friend of ours, and we always have to worry about the Niflheim situation. Hopefully, right, Machaca, this is where they jumped on Yomi Fort, right, where they killed that scout. So hopefully this indicates, right, that they're going to start fighting with Niflheim, but that said, like, Niflheim was kind of, I don't want to say overextended, but if you only have a single scout sitting on top of someone else's like untaken fort, and there's actually like only Yomi flags like bordering this, like, it's not exactly like Machaca is invading like Niflheim proper. Still, that is a good sign and hopefully something that will keep Niflheim busy. We are still, of course, having income problems as ever. We're in an okay spot, but we are building a lab here this turn, and we would like to get a fort up here probably before we jump in, at least like a palisade, so that if it all goes wrong, we have a decent choke point to retreat to. So we've actually had to recruit or cut mage recruitment. Let's see, not here. There's some province. Perhaps on the throne. Yeah, so we're cutting some mage recruitment, and we're not really doing much troop recruitment, just a single equite. We're not even upgrading this lizard fort here. So, money is not great, right? One lab kind of constrains our recruitment pretty heavily. Otherwise, of course, we are bringing this stuff back, and probably once all of this, makes it down, it'll form up into an army that'll be big enough to actually challenge this. So we are probably still a few turns out, and we'll, just continue to poke and raid in the meantime. We are doing a little bit of forging. Let's see, we water bracelet for some water site searching, as well as a Starshine Skullcap to help boost some of our astral. We got a fire booster here, which we'll need for the plan that we are about to discuss. And then we are also forging some skull mentors, which are the death research items. And this is kind of painful because, early age Ermor can really use death gems. And we have no native income. We actually have a decent death income here. We've gotten decently lucky this game. It's not a great death income, but the reason that we are doing this, we're not going to be forging a ton of skull mentors, but we would like to get a little bit of research to try to boost us up to enchantment 6. And why enchantment 6, you ask? Well, there's plenty of useful things, right? The best skeleton spell is here, and we can make skeletons, definitely. But what we're mainly looking at is Eternal Pyre. And this is the fire gem generator, right? So 20 fire gems each month. And I gotta be honest, I didn't really have a specific plan for these fire gems. It was mostly I just wanted to get a global up this game. It was, one of my goals. And since, fire gems are considered one of the weaker gem types, people usually don't fight over Eternal Pyre, at least as much. Certainly 20 gems a turn is pretty significant, so I don't think it's a bad global, but I felt like, it was one that kind of lined up with some good research goals for us anyway, and, one that I felt that I could probably hit, and that we also have an income for, just natively from our capital, and we're likely to find a lot of fire sites because we have a lot of fire wizards. We have not found any fire sites this game. And so yeah, this is definitely like thoughts and plans that I had before the game even started, and it does kind of highlight that, you do have to kind of roll the punches, and depending on what the game gives you, I do think it's necessary sometimes to adapt. So, maybe should have abandoned this plan, but instead I doubled down and I figured, well, hang on, like I'm sitting, right next door to the other preeminent firepower who I'm on good terms with. So, I contacted them and said, hey, why don't, we split Eternal Pyre? And they were happy to do so. They said they didn't really have anybody ready that could cast it, and we can cast it with, we're going to need both fire boosters with our pretender, but then once we get those on him, he will be able to cast it for us. So yeah, that is currently the plan. We're going to put up Eternal Pyre, which will get us Eternal Fire gems. And then, we can use that income to actually like have a fire income, and then we'll start to make lightless lanterns. Is it the best plan? Perhaps not, but it's what I went with, and I think that covers turn 42.